Well, I think the Biden administration, more than anything else, wants to go back into the Iran nuclear deal. Biden was a part of the Obama administration when it was negotiated, and Obama at that time thought it was the most important thing in the second term of his presidency. So when the Trump administration withdrew, this was a body blow to the record of the Obama presidency, and fixing that in Biden's mind is a very high priority. I think that he is beginning to understand, however, that the earth has changed a good deal since we withdrew in 2018, and that Iran's effort to get deliverable nuclear weapons, which they never gave up, has now been advanced in many, many ways that they didn't contemplate during the time they were out of office. So it's now much harder for Biden to go back into the deal, and he understands that if he were to re-enter the deal with Iran in non-compliance, that it would be total surrender. But make no mistake, his objective remains the same, and that's getting back into the deal. But Iran has done some things that are very difficult to roll back. Just a few days ago, the International Atomic Energy Agency announced that they had found Iran was fabricating uranium metal. Now, the regime said, well, that's for fuel for reactors, but I think people really know the main use for uranium metal is for nuclear warheads. So you don't unlearn something like how to fabricate uranium metal, and it shows what a continuing threat Iran is, and why I thought it was the right move to get out of the deal to begin with, and why I think Biden is pursuing ultimately a hopeless policy by trying to resurrect the deal. Biden should look at what's happened in the region since the 2015 deal and since he left office as vice president. There has been a tectonic political shift, but fundamentally the regime is not going to change. At least that's my view, which is why I've said for a long time now we need a different regime in Tehran. You know, when Trump was explaining to the French and the Germans and others that he was about to leave the nuclear deal, President Macron of France said, well, look, we agree with you. The deal is too limited. We need a bigger deal. It needs to cover ballistic missiles and this other behavior. And Trump said he would consider a larger deal. Now, I said at the time, there is no larger deal here. But if Biden wanted to pursue it, I think actually the Europeans might be interested in it. I think all that would do would be to show, after a lot of negotiation, that the regime in Tehran doesn't compromise on anything. Well, I think the Trump policy imposed a lot of pain on the regime, much more than people thought. We were told at the time of the withdrawal in 2018, we were told what multilateral sanctions couldn't do, unilateral American sanctions can't do either. Right. But our sanctions turned out to be much more effective than the multilateral UN Security Council sanctions. The fact remains we didn't go far enough. We didn't put enough pressure on. In effect, Iran's really only about a week away, because if they wire enough money to North Korea, they could have nuclear weapons very, very quickly. That's why the threat of rogue states like North Korea and Iran is not simply the threat they pose in their region, it's their proliferation impact. And I don't think the Trump administration did an adequate job on North Korea. I don't have much hope for the Biden administration either. But in terms of Iran's indigenous capability, we have to remember that intelligence is not perfect. America learned that before in the case of the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. But the fact is, the key flaw, the original sin of the nuclear deal with Iran in 2015 was to allow them any uranium enrichment capability at all. The fact that they have exceeded the limits in the 2015 deal is not a good sign, but it's not catastrophic. Because of the nature of the enrichment process, the work that they can do, that they are permitted to do under the deal to enrich to reactor-grade uranium, puts them 70% of the way toward what they need to do to get weapons-grade uranium. That's the basic problem. That's why the deal was flawed to begin with. Well, I'm afraid that the real inclination of the Biden presidency will be to repeat what Obama thought, which was that it was really Iran that was the great power in the region, and that it was Iran that, if you could persuade to come out of its isolation, would ultimately be the rock of stability across the Middle East. I think that's entirely the reverse of the truth, certainly under the present regime in Tehran. But I think the Iranians are following a very clear strategy, and Biden has fallen into a trap.